your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening. Welcome, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week we're going to talk about apocalyptic horror. And this is a category that is pretty broad, and you could bring a lot of things into this. Pretty much any zombie movie would fall under this category, any end of the world scenario, any virus. There's all different ways that the apocalypse can be brought upon us. So it's pretty broad, but I like that we strayed away from maybe the normal mainstream selection here. And, what do you think of this category, and what do you think of the movies we picked?
This is a great category because there's this metaphor that kind of states that the apocalypse is always among us, right? We're always doing everything we can with society to keep trust and resources together, and society is very fragile. And so there's, this idea that we're always on the brink of the apocalyptic nightmare. And I think these movies, they really play, like, they have a lot of fun with playing that to the extreme and playing on people's fears, whether it's like nuclear war or famine, or, all these things that have plagued, society in the past. And you really get to see filmmakers do some fun stuff with it.
One of the things I like about what we do is, as we walk through the history of horror, we delve into nooks and crannies that are maybe less exposed. It'd be easy to walk through the most famous movies in horror and just bring us up to today. And we touch on the classics, of course, but I like bringing the more obscure and maybe exposing people to something they hadn't heard of and maybe opening a new avenue. And I know I love discovering movies that way, from word of mouth or different things. So I like that we go with some of the obscure, some of the foreign films that we bring up. And I think this category, we did good in what we selected, and I really like where we went.
Yeah, I think the fun thing about horror is there's so many gems within the obscure that you can't separate horror like from the mainstream stuff. You can't separate it from all those like hidden gems, those niche movies. I think the genre is all kind of one and the same. There's a lot of great B movies. There's a lot of great of these splatter movies. They're fun. So yeah, it's great to bring them up and talk about them amongst the other great movies.
It actually, you make a great point. It actually brings me back to my teenage years, pouring through the VHS tapes in the video store and looking at all the outlandish covers, and that's a gem hunt in itself, because in there was a ton of garbage, but you pull out a Reanimator or something that you hadn't heard of, when you were that young, and go, oh my God, this is a fantastic movie. I don't care what the budget was.
Right, yeah, and you just knew that the idea was good. It was just a fun script, however it was acted with whatever budget they had. But you knew that the idea was going to be fun, like you said, and they just kind of went with it. And they may just make these oftentimes just these fun movies that you get on the train, you're like, all right, let's go. We're going for this ride.
Absolutely. Our first movie falls squarely in that category for me. It's a movie I discovered in the 80s, and it's been one of my favorites ever since. We're gonna talk about Demons from 1985, directed by Lamberto Bava, son of the legendary Italian director Mario Bava, whose work we've covered previously. And this movie was also produced by Italian legend Dario Argento. So a lot of big hitters from the Italian horror scene came into making this movie.
Yeah, I'd never seen this movie before. I had heard of it when I was growing up, like we were talking earlier. I had seen Night of the Demons. I think I saw 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. But I saw those growing up, but I never saw this Demons. So it was really fun to go back and watch this.
Yeah, our movie starts with Cheryl, one of our main characters, and she's being followed through a subway system by a creepy man with a metallic mask. And there's a little cat and mouse. It's almost like a stalker type of opening scene. But when when the guy in the mask gets to her, all he does is give her a movie premiere ticket.
Yeah.
And the tensions broke immediately, and she says, hey, can I get a second one for a friend? So
it's a little bit of comic relief right there, which this movie does a lot, but it does it very in a fun way.
Yeah, it sure does. So she gets a second one for her friend Kathy. They meet up, and they're going to this theater that they're both unfamiliar with. It's a theater they never heard of. And when they get there, they meet two college boys, George and Ken. And in the lobby, we see a collection of patrons going to this movie. There's a couple where the old man is just real nasty to his wife. He's just a real jerk.
Dirtbag.
Yeah, just awful. His poor hapless wife. We see a pimp named Tony, and he brings two of his girls. We oddly see a blind man with a young woman who's his caretaker. Don't really know the relationship there, but
it kind of comes off as this like connoisseur of arts, and he's going to some exhibit, because that's kind of how like they make it seem. Like when they're coming into this theater, it almost seems like they're gathering for a play. Like it's not like a regular movie theater.
Going on.
The opera, right. Yeah.
And of course, not to get ahead, but the theater is one of those multi-level, just gorgeous old-fashioned theaters that I would love to see a movie in.
Yeah, I'd love to go like to a balcony theater. I've never done that.
They've all been replaced by the mall. And,
yeah. Well, you know what? I grew up in Randolph, Mass, and I think the theater there has a balcony now. So I've heard. I haven't been there in a while.
There you go.
So
worth
kind
a
of
visit.
exists. Yeah.
That's the sacrifice I guess for 16 different movies playing on one night is the lack of character. But those old movie theaters, I think are amazing.
Yeah.
Which adds to making it seem like an opera.
Right.
There's also a young couple on a date, sweet young couple, and in a display in the lobby, there's a motorcycle with a sword and a metallic demon mask. And one of the ladies with Tony, Rosemary, she puts it on, and it scratches her, and her cheek is bleeding. And everyone goes into the movie, and I had to look this up because the movie they're watching, I was thinking, is this a real movie? Because I would totally watch this movie.
Yeah.
But it was filmed just for this movie, so a movie within a movie type of thing. But it's a horror movie about four teenagers who find Nostradamus's tomb. And
they're grave robbing, right? They're just like causing trouble. They're going into stuff.
Hey, Nostradamus is famous. Let's see what we find. And what they find is a demon mask, just like the one in the lobby. Mm-hmm. And they find an old book of predictions from Nostradamus. And one of the group in the movie puts the mask on and is cut just exactly like Rosemary was. So at this point, Rosemary's watching and she's feeling a little uneasy, and the bleeding just won't stop. So she's not feeling real well. So she goes into the bathroom. And she's poking and prodding around with the cut, and it starts to swell and grow until, she's just poking at it, and then it just bursts pus everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest scenes. And this movie is very gooey and pussy.
It is very gooey and pussy. And
yeah.
Again, we're talking 1985, and we're not talking a huge budget, but the effects are good.
They were very good.
Very good.
Yeah.
So finally, her friend goes in to check on her, and she's kind of crouched down in one of the stalls with her back to her, and she's you doing okay? Everything okay? And she turns around and she's a demon, and she slices her neck with her nails,
and just gooing like the green stuff's coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, she's foaming, and you could probably say, well, the green stuff was a little too bright, a little toxic Mountain Dew-ish that maybe didn't fit, but it was over the top and fun.
It was 85. Yeah, I mean, they were pioneering a lot of these types of effects back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. So
yeah, I'll definitely giving them a pass, but it looks like toxic waste that she's drooling, and maybe it is
Toxic Avenger. Yeah,
she so the sliced girl now runs and staggers, and she's running away, and she's hiding behind the screen, So there's screams in the movie, and she's screaming behind the screen, which kind of makes for a cool, like, wait a minute, am I hearing something or
Right.
am I not hearing something?
Yeah, because that one of the girls in the audience, she's like, "Do you hear that screaming?" And he's like, "It's the Dolby surround sound." And they actually give a nice little shout out to Dolby right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of product placement in here,
Interesting
particularly
product placement.
Coca-Cola.
Yes, yeah, yeah. The Dolby and the Coca-Cola were the two funniest ones because
Yeah,
they give the shout out on the Dolby when the girl's dying and screaming. It was kind of comical, like
yeah, that's how it's so lifelike. You wouldn't even know if someone was dying right in
right,
front of
right,
you.
right.
So she starts transforming because she was cut by her demon friend. She starts transforming into a demon and finally rips through the screen. And the viewers all descend into chaos, which is increased when over the balcony, Rosemary, the first demon, throws a hanged man who's now swinging in the midst of all the people who are running around in chaos.
Yeah,
So it gets a little crazy quick. Um, Everyone tries to run, and the demon who's come through the screen, she starts killing people. There's a fantastic eye gouge scene that I know you appreciated.
yeah. It was wonderful. Yeah,
And
she just
there's,
goes up to him and just puts her fingers right in his eyeballs. And he was the blind guy, I believe, right?
yeah, and
Yeah,
there's also yeah,
yeah,
it's like you just blinded a blind guy.
yeah. It was just for the pain of it, but
Yeah,
it's
there's also
carnage.
a great scalping done by hand only,
Hmm.
which was a pretty good effect, and it gets crazy. So they try to all escape and find that the theater is locked. They can't get out. So the group now decides that they need to go up to the projector room, shut off the movie, and the movie's cursed. And if they shut off the movie, everything will be okay. But they get there and find that the movie is running on computer automated projector. There's nobody in the projection booth. So their only recourse is they start smashing everything,
Yeah,
smashing the computers.
the pimp that came in there has become the leader of the group. He's the moralist now, and he knows exactly what to do. Is like just start destroying this stuff right
Mm-hmm.
away. He just right away, and they just start destroying everything.
Yeah. We cut to outside of the theater. In the outside world, we see a gang of punks driving around, and they're doing drugs and they're causing mayhem. They're actually another can of Coca-Cola as a product placement, except they're sniffing white Coke out of it instead of
Right.
actually drinking it,
With the straw, yeah. And I
which I'm
think they
sure was not endorsed by Coke as a real
no,
product
I
placement.
don't know how they got away with that.
Yeah. They end up with cops pursuing them and then chasing them down an alley. Well, back inside the theater, our group has barricaded themselves into the theater portion of the facility by breaking down all the chairs and all the seats and blocking all the doors. And now they're pounding on the outside walls, hoping somebody can hear them for help. In fact, at one point, they break through a cinder block wall and find a secret room. But once they explore it, there's no exit in the secret room. So that's kind of a wasted avenue.
Yeah,
While the punks are running down the alley, of course, it's the alley right next to our theater, and a back door just opens all by itself.
yeah,
And the punks run in. It's their only escape. But they also let out a demon who happens to be the crawling blind guy who had his eyes gouged. So now the demon spread is outside the theater.
right. Yeah. So the house has the theater has let him in, and I guess like we find out in the movie that it's not just the movie that was possessed; it's the entire theater itself. So it's almost like the theater like let him in, and also it's letting the spread like come out and just infect the entire town.
Yep, and that's where our apocalyptic nature comes in, because this
Mhm.
does not stay contained. So the group they start hearing noises, and they think it's a rescue. So they start tearing down their own barricade, only to be assaulted by a horde of demons.
Yeah, they
Everyone
made it
that's
worse.
Yeah, everyone that's killed by a demon becomes a demon. So it's very zombie-like in its approach to this manifestation, but it's, they
It is.
distinguish it by the demon instead of being a zombie.
Yeah, they say that in the beginning when they're grave robbing, when they're reading. I think it's Nostradamus's thing that they're reading, and they talk
Yes.
about how they'll turn the tombs into cities.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. There's like a prophetic thing in the movie that carries
Right.
through, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on purpose that it's there.
Yeah, well, and I think like playing this movie for people was like the activation. I think like how like you have like the Necromon like book, like once you say the certain words, once you summon it, then it becomes true. Then that you've released the ghost or the demon into the world.
Yeah.
And I think this movie did a technological version of that. Like once the movie is watched by people, then you've released the demon. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's in the air or
Right.
Yep, gotcha. Yeah, I agree. Well, that seems to be what they're going for here. And again, Italian movies are particularly the giallo films are famous for their wonderfully staged and executed set pieces, and not necessarily their logic.
Right.
Which it's kind of like, hey, we have an idea for this would be amazing, and then we build story around it.
I mean, which is fine. I'm actually fine with that. I'll go with either or as long as the execution is done well. Because, I mean, I'm willing to bypass a lot of logic because you're doing that immediately when you say, "Oh, the town is run by demons," but other stuff has to be logical. It's like, well, it's
right.
We're having fun with this
suspension of belief when you go into a lot of these movies. Anyways, you're
right.
You're 100%
so
right.
as long as it's executed well, I'm fine with that.
So our main four, Cheryl and Kathy and George and Ken, they managed to escape this demon horde. But it turns out Kathy was cut and she turns into a demon. And they managed to knock her away. And in one of those moments we just talked about that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, while she's down on the ground, a almost full-size demon is birthed out of her back.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even fit like where it's like her back is right here, and it's just like lifting up out of there. It's like, wait, she only has like 4 inches of stomach length. Like, how is this thing coming up? But whatever. But it was a cool prop.
It was basically almost the size of her all the way around. So it was a cool effect, but it was it kind of defies logic a bit.
Yeah, it was almost like they filmed the top of like a treasure chest, and like the guy just emerged out of it, and they had the facts around it. They just filmed that. That's how it was filmed or something.
This freshly birthed demon slices Ken, and now Ken knows he's doomed for the same kind of fate. And he asks George to kill him using the sword or the katana that's in the lobby. So he does, and then him and Cheryl get on the motorcycle that's in the lobby, and they're running around on the motorcycle trying to escape while slicing demons as they go.
I absolutely love this scene. I was excited. I was just like enthralled the whole time. I was like, yeah, like they're in a movie theater with the dirt bike and a katana killing demons, like just flying around. I was like, whoever came up with this idea was a genius.
And he's very good on the bike. They're going up and down stairs.
Yeah, they're doing all
maneuvering,
tricks.
But they're hacking demons along the way.
Yeah.
And then in a surprise twist, a helicopter falls through the roof of the theater.
Yeah, there's no logic behind it whatsoever. It's like, here's a helicopter, just falls right in.
I mean, I took it to be, and a pretty quick, but I took it to be the spread and degradation of society outside of the walls.
And that's exactly what it is. It's just so random because they don't at no point do they like allude to a helicopter like circling over them earlier or anything. There's never an allusion to it. It just happens.
It's just, it's very random.
Yeah.
And you also think it was like 15 minutes from the blind guy crawling out the door to helicopter falling through the roof. The degradation of society was quicker than the degradation inside the contained theater.
Right.
So, the logic doesn't flow again, but it was still cool seeing helicopter just drops through the roof of the theater.
Yeah, it was awesome.
George, who knows how to run a katana, and drive a motorcycle up and down stairs, also knows how to turn on equipment inside of a helicopter. As he fires up the blades, and there's a cool scene where the blades are chopping up demons as they're trying to approach.
Yeah.
I get why they did it.
Slicing faces.
It's a cool scene. Again, a little bit of logic lacking there.
Yeah.
They use the winch on the front of the copter to propel themselves up through the hole in the roof. That's they finally have an escape path. But once they get up top, they're met by the man in the metal mask who started this whole thing by handing out these tickets, and he pushes George back into the hole. George catches himself and he's hanging on, and the man in the mask is trying to knock him off the whole time and knock him back into the theater. And Cheryl takes the grappling hook that they had thrown up there and runs it through the back of the man, stabs him right through with it. So he's down, and now he's struggling, and George manages to get back up, and they kill the man by forcing his masked face straight down through a piece of rebar.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. 2 pieces for both of his eyes. Yeah,
they got him lined up perfectly.
Yeah,
he fell in just the right spot, but it was a cool scene, a cool effect.
It was very cool. I liked it.
They stand on the roof and they look around, and they can see that the demon infestation is everywhere and the city's in ruins.
Yeah.
So they try to escape. They're being chased down the streets by hordes of demons, and they get picked up by a family of survivors in a Jeep, and they're all armed, including the little kid in the front seat. He looks to be like 8 or 9, and he's got an automatic rifle. And
it's the apocalypse now.
Yeah, family's just loaded up, ready to go, and they let them get on, and they all head out of town looking for somewhere safe. And you think the movie's over, but as the credits start to roll,
this is a cool trick they played. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, our main characters at least got away, or at least 2 of them. But as the credits start to roll, you see Cheryl start to pick at a cut on her neck, and she quickly turns, and without hesitation, the 8 or 9-year-old boy in the front seat just blasts her right in the head and knocks her straight out of the Jeep into the road.
Yeah, you see her roll down, the Jeep keeps going. Yeah.
And you can almost hear George thinking, man, I went through all this, and I don't even get to date this girl. I've been flirting with her for an hour and 40 minutes, and now she's gone.
This movie is truly a tragedy.
Yeah, and you get apocalyptic nightmare. It really gives you no sense of hope that these survivors in the Jeep really have any.
Where they're just going into another bad situation.
Yeah. So, like I said, this was one of my favorite movies from the 80s. When I discovered it, I'm like, the effects, the blood and gore was so well done. The characters, although a little over the top, like Tony the pimp is a little extra, but they're fun.
They're fun. Yeah. He becomes the leader of the group. Like he just knows what to do. It's everyone's like, all right, yeah, he knows what to do, and they're all listening to him. So it's kind of like, the bad guy becomes the good guy in the group.
He's the loudest with the biggest muscles, so everybody's following him.
Yeah.
But at times of tragedy, most people are going to be looking for someone to give them direction.
Yeah, at that point, everything's out the window anyways. So it's just like, listen, we just need to survive. Who knows what to do, and whoever's taking charge takes charge. And I thought the cinematography in this movie was actually really good. I really loved all the scenes that they had with, like all the transformations and the killings were all good. Like the guy who's mean to his wife gets his throat ripped out. It's like, well, good, you can't say mean things to her anymore.
Yeah.
Like they had fun with the deaths and stuff like that. And I really like the scene when all the chaos and carnage starts, and they have it like in the backdrop, you can see the demon's face on the screen looking at everyone as a close-up and just smiling and like drooling, almost like he's looking at them through the movie, like he knows what's going on. And I was like, man, that's such a good shot that they got right there. But they did a lot of cool stuff like that. I really liked it.
Yeah, no, I agree. First time I saw this, I was blown away. Again, I saw it when it was fairly new in the mid '80s, and I was just like, wow, this movie's fantastic. And some of it, if you can put yourself in that era, some of it does hold up. It doesn't have the quality of modern effects per se, but it those movies to me, that's part of their charm is, how hard people had to work and be creative to pull some of these things off. And I love it.
And it's a screenshot of the era with the technology that was available. They were, like you said, they were working with what they had, and they pulled off some magic. And I can't help but notice parallels to Dusk Till Dawn. I had to wonder if this was any, because being trapped in an area, like in a secluded area where you have like vampires, demons, zombies, or whatever it is, and this group of people has to come together as they whittle away and die one by one, try to survive. And then there's wacky weapons like katanas and helicopters and stuff. And I was like, that had to have been some kind of influence.
No, you would
or maybe not. Maybe I'm just putting it together in my head. But
yeah, no, you would think it was pretty groundbreaking, I thought, at the time. In fact,
yeah.
A year later, they made a sequel because
Mm-hmm.
it was so successful. And the sequel moved to an apartment complex. So now you have multi floors of this demon manifestation. And I think of movies like Wreck, Quarantine, that kind of copied that same dynamic. And there's a scene in that movie where a demon comes through the television screen and like morphs out into the room.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that predates, The Ring, by many, many years. And it's kind of the same trick.
Yeah, they pulled this groundbreaking stuff in the 80s. I have to see Demons 2. I actually heard it was really good. When I was doing
I
some
think
research
the first
for this
one's
movie.
better, as is usually the case, but it's definitely worth seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out.
All right, cool. Well, our second movie on our list is more of a modern film. It's The Sadness from 2021, directed by Rob Jabaz, and this movie takes place in Taiwan, and it's subtitled foreign film. And this movie is brutal,
Very sadistic,
and relentless, and
very relentless. Yeah.
We talk about the effects in a movie like Demons from 1985. The effects in The Sadness are fantastic, and they're also nonstop. There is so much blood in this movie. It's pretty relentless.
Yeah, it's a rampage of homicide and horror throughout the whole movie. You're 13 minutes into the movie. It's real quick, 13 minutes in, and it just kicks right up.
Yeah, and it takes a premise similar to like The Crazies, where this is a virus. These people aren't dead; they're just subjected to this virus, and it drives them with primal emotions and instincts of violence and sexual deviancy, and they just take it farther than any movie I had seen takes it.
So I'll take my interpretation of the premise from watching the movie. I'll say this before we run through it. Later in the movie, when we meet the scientist, he explains how the virus actually, what it does is it basically hyperdrives your limbic system. So all your like aggression, sexual desire, hunger, and thirst are just ramped up to 13. So what that does is that takes over your rationale. And at one point in the movie, we see one of the guys who's infected about to pull out a knife and kill people, and you see a tear go down his face. So it's almost like the people know what they're doing, but their limbic system is being supercharged to do this stuff, but they still have the rational part in the back of their head. So they know what they're doing, even if they don't want to do it. And I think that's why it's called The Sadness.
And he explains, and that's a great note. He explains that they can no more stop themselves than you can not blink.
Yes.
Which gives a great perspective, I thought.
But you don't find that out to the end of the movie. So, I mean, I just wanted to put that in as the footnote before we go forward, that's, it's part of the genius, I think, in the movie.
And one of the things that makes it so horrific is that these are not mindless creatures. They're aware. They're articulate, smart. They're devilish. They're creative, and they know exactly what they're doing. And That sure ramps up something over like a mindless zombie.
baseballs. Right. Yeah. They're not mindless at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we start with our main couple, Kat and Jim. They're a young couple waking up in their apartment. And on the news, they're talking about the Alvin virus and talking about possibilities of mutation. Their neighbor says, the virus is a hoax, but he also notes that he's a little bit sick. And you got to remember, this is 2021. This is very much a COVID movie.
Yeah.
A lot of people wearing masks, a lot of people with fear, a lot of different information out there. It's very much a COVID reflection.
They're talking about how it's the hoax to bring down the stock market, and then someone else later on is saying, well, this whole virus has really brought the housing market down. And there's just all these allegories to stuff that was going on with COVID. It was interesting how they threw it all in there.
Yeah. And it was, 2021, it was the forefront of everyone's mind, and they used it really well in this movie. Jim, looking over the balcony, he sees an old woman in a white nightgown standing on a roof, and she has blood all over the front of her. And he looks for Kat, and then he looks back, and she's gone.
Had a very It Follows vibe right there.
Exactly. Yeah, she's on the roof. Like, why are you there? Why are you bloody?
Just eerie music with this pan shot going back nice and slow, and I was like, oh, this is creepy right away.
So Jim takes Kat to work on his scooter, and on the way there, they pass a bloody accident in the road, which is kind of a sign of things to come. After he drops her off, he stops into a little diner to get a cup of coffee, and the woman in the bloody nightgown walks in, and nobody's looking at her, so she walks up behind everyone, and she's an absolute nightmare. Her eyes are puffy red, her teeth are all rotted, and the first thing she does is she spits or vomits on one of the kids who stands up to look at her. And the second thing she does is, people start to react to her, she grabs the fryer that the guy behind the counter is cooking with and dumps the hot oil on his face.
Yeah.
And then she grabs his melting face and is just ripping it away as it's melting from the oil.
And when that happened, it was at that moment I paused the movie and I texted my dad and I was like, you have to watch this movie.
Like, that's all it took, huh?
That's all. That one scene, we're 13 minutes in, I was like, oh man, we're in for a ride here. I texted my dad right away. I was like, Dad, you got to check this out. It's called The Sadness.
And this is a fast moving virus, because the guy she spits or vomits on, he turns and he starts killing other people. So this little diner is quickly turned into madness, and Jim starts backing out into the road, and the old woman follows him out, and then in a quick shock, she's just mowed down by a car.
Yeah,
it's completely annihilated.
And not only that, he walks over to the car to see if the person driving is okay, and it's another zombie, and he's just laughing like she came out of nowhere, like, and he's got the red eye infection.
He's got the red eye,
like,
and his
and then someone jumps on top of the car, and he's a zombie, and he turns around, and a woman's falling out of a building, like, and plops right onto the ground. Her whole body splats, and it's just chaos is ensuing.
And what I loved about that scene was it was so much at once, but particularly what hit me was the woman falling from the top of the building. There's no cut.
Yeah, they show the body.
You just see the body falling.
Yep.
And then you see the body hit, and there's no cutaway. There's no change in camera angle. And
I appreciated that a lot.
Because of that, it was even like extra devastating, I thought.
Yeah, because you expect it to happen. Your brain's waiting for the cutaway, and it doesn't happen. You go, ooh.
Yeah. Usually you see a different shot, a different angle, but
there aren't a lot of cutaways in this movie.
It set the tone that, like, okay, this is going to be balls to the wall and nothing's off limits.
Yep. And that's true.
So now there's a group of the infected, and they're kind of surrounding Jim and coming towards him, and he manages to take off. And again, these aren't zombies; they're infected people, so they're fast. And they run just as fast as Jim does.
And luckily, strategic, they can strategize. Yeah, they can problem solve.
Yeah. Luckily, he's young and in pretty good shape. He manages to get home.
Mhm.
Of course, inside his home is where he discovers his once sick neighbor who thinks that the virus is a hoax, is red-eyed and chasing him with a pair of garden shears, where he manages to snip off 2 of Jim's fingers and picks up one and starts eating it.
And then chews on it and spits it in the fish tank.
In the fish tank, yes. Yeah, there was, and Jim manages to fight him off. He knocks him out, and then he leaves. He goes outside, and there's a gang of these infected, and they're on a man on steps, and they're just going at him, but they see him start to pull his arm, and they snap his arms backwards.
Yeah, they hold up his arm. Someone puts their hand like right on their foot right on the elbow and snap. And again, no takeaways. They just show the whole thing.
Yeah, just in the wrong direction, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
He gets on his bike and takes off, but the mob sees him and they start chasing him. And
everywhere he goes, everywhere he turns, that's all it is. That's kind of what the movie's showing you with all of these different scenes. It's every direction he goes, and it's just different chaos. It's everywhere. It's all around him. There's no safe haven.
Yeah, and like you said, quick. Sometimes we see movies, the spread takes a while. This is so fast. This is a fast-moving virus, and
just like in Demons.
Wow, it's overrun so fast.
Yeah.
We cut to Kat, who is on a commuter train, and she's reading a book. So none of this has hit where she is yet. She's not aware. Nobody's aware. Everybody on the train is calm and normal. There's an old man who keeps bothering her. He wants to talk to her, and he keeps interrupting her reading. And finally he says, I see you on here every day, and you're very pretty. And he's just getting awkward, right?
He's creepy. He's the creepy guy. In my notes, he's the creepy guy.
Yeah, well, and he gets creepier. Yeah. So on the train, there is somebody who happens to be infected, and they're wearing sunglasses, so nobody can even see their red eyes.
And this is the teardrop guy. You see a teardrop come down right before he pulls the knife. And I think that's when I started putting things together. Well, it took me until the end of the movie to put it all together because I was wondering about the teardrop, but then it's later explained.
The scientific explanation, brings it back. But yeah, he pulls out his knife and he starts just pistoning it into a guy in front of him. He stabs him like 15 times instantly.
Yeah.
It's just like, and so he starts screaming. Then he starts stabbing others, and the train becomes just
slip and slide
in a ridiculous amount of blood. There's a thick sludge of blood on the floor of the train,
the
walls, and like everybody on the seats. It's just splattered all over the front of them.
Yeah,
a ridiculous amount of blood.
I was wondering how much slipping and sliding and falling that people were doing while actually filming this movie. I bet the bloopers would have been hilarious.
Oh my goodness! It was almost a Tarantino-esque excessive blood.
Yes, yeah,
like
he stabs him in the side of like the neck or something like that, and it just shoots straight up.
Yeah, guys are just painting the walls everywhere. Yeah. But it was just a mess, and quickly we had about 3 to 5 minutes of Kat
carnage,
of Kat being just having a normal conversation before it came back, and now it's just chaos again.
Yeah.
The old man, the train, everybody on the train now, or most of the people on the train, it's dissolved into violence and sexual deviancy, and there's people just right on the floor, just grabbing people and start going at them. And the old man, the creepy man, takes his umbrella and he stabs a girl named Molly right through the eye.
Yeah.
We always manage to get an eye for you, Matt. This week
Every
we got
movie.
2 of them.
We had three in this week. There was 2 in Demons.
2 in the
yeah.
2 eyes at the same time. I count as 1, but whatever.
No, there was 2 separate ones because the girl demon takes her fingers and takes his eyes out, and then later on we have the rebar at the end.
True. Yeah, you're right. This is the week of the eyes. This should have been the category.
Yeah. Well, there's 4 of them now. I think about it because week of the eyes. Then that'll have to be an episode we do. There's actually a fourth one because on this train scene, you see one of the girls like takes both their fingers and they're putting it right in the guy's
Right?
eyes, and it's
Yeah.
all bubbling
It's
up.
almost the
Yeah,
exact same scene with the
yeah,
fingers in the eyes, just like
yeah.
just
From
like in
Demons. Yeah,
Demons.
exactly it. Yeah,
Yeah. So Kat helps Molly off the train as soon as the door opens, and the old man is chasing him. And he went from uh, telling Kat that she's very pretty, very beautiful, to now he's infected. He's telling her all the vile things he wants to do to her, and it quickly goes dark.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. There should be some kind of list on the internet with all the vile things that were said in this movie because the script is vicious.
It is, yeah, absolutely is. We go back to Jim. He's moving through the city. He's trying to get to Kat, and as you mentioned, there's just savage death everywhere. He's just seeing bodies, intestines strewn about, all kinds of crazed acts. He sees a man. He's ripped the other man's legs sideways, and he's raping the man. And
Yeah, the zombies are raping people. I've never seen that in a movie.
yeah, it's insanity.
Yeah.
He finds a weapon first of all, and then he comes to a group that's torturing a man, and they're doing awful things to him. They wrap barbed wire around a post, and they
Hit
grab
him
him
in the
by
head
the
with a
legs, and
baseball.
they ram his
Yeah.
genitals into the barbed
Yeah.
wire post.
Yeah, I thought that was creative for zombies. I was like, oh, they're thinking.
It was definitely creative.
Yeah.
He tries to save the man, scares off the people who were hurting him, and the man was infected and didn't want saving. He was excited by all of it.
Yeah, yeah, because he was infected too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
also infected. So it just keeps selling this
it's hell.
deviancy that you
It's
never
it's like
expect.
hell. It's like the seventh level of hell, where even the demons are just eating each other. Yeah, it's just nonsense.
So the group comes back when they're throwing baseballs at him, and then the four who he thought he was trying to save, one of them, now they're all chasing him, and he gets on his bike and he gets away. Kat and Molly may manage to make it to a hospital for Molly's eye, and she is taken in for treatment. And I found it a little odd that the hospital waiting room was not yet descended into chaos, which I feel like it would have been based on what we saw in the city.
Yeah, and the way they portrayed that is there's a guy with a gun, and the doors are locked. So that was that.
There's two cops, a male and a female, and they're kind of standing by the door. And then that right now is enough to manage to keep it sane, but not for long.
Yep.
Molly is taken in for treatment, and while she's in the waiting area, Kat borrows a phone from a short guy who tried to lock them out when they were being chased by the old creepy guy. So she's not real happy with this guy, but she takes his phone and she tries to call Jim, and she can't get through. In the waiting room, there's a TV, and it cuts to a news update. And I thought this was kind of a cool interlude because it's the government, and there's a general on there telling you, hey,
Yeah.
the things are bad, but we're going to get it under control, and giving the appearance of everything's going to be okay, as
Right.
governments often
We're
do.
going to get in front of this, and we're going to take action, and we're going to unite, and we're going to be, we're going to get through this. Yeah.
And then he introduces the president, and it quickly turns ugly as one of the generals is infected
Yeah.
and stuffs a grenade straight into the president's mouth, probably breaking teeth on the way in.
Yeah.
And on TV, this broadcast across the country, the president's head blows up a la Scanners.
Scanners. Yeah, I said the same thing. I had that in my notes.
Chunks of brain and
Yeah.
fly everywhere.
Yeah.
And again, the effects are just really well done the whole way. And there's a lot of them.
And they throw a lot of little comedy here and there in the movie too. Like when the speech is going on, it's like, we as a nation have stuck together, and the one guy's like, what is this, a history lesson? Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Sick of the typical political speech, Yeah.
Well, finally, the waiting room starts to break down. There's a fight, and then Kat sees the creepy old man, fully infected, standing outside of the glass doors with an axe in his hand. And he axes through the glass straight into the back of the male police officer. and he comes in and starts killing. And the woman police officer is quickly stabbed and thrown down, and she's being molested. And Kat manages to escape through a side door, and the old man is gone looking for her. That's all he wants, is to track her down. Can you imagine being the guy and he's reading for this role, and okay, you have to be an old man of a certain age, and I got to do what and say what? And he was phenomenal, because he was as creepy as you could be.
Yeah. But
so
they pushed the envelope this entire movie.
Yeah, and this scene is the next scene is probably the best example of it. He's looking for Kat, our old creepy man. Instead, he finds Molly, and he knows they were together. And he's the one who poked her eye through with the end of his umbrella.
Yeah.
And now he wants to take it a step further, and he penetrates her bloody eye socket hole.
Yeah.
And obviously they don't show the penetration. They show him. They show enough.
What they do is they do two things to let the audience know what's happening. They show him like doing the thrusting, and you can hear her screaming. So her mouth is clearly not being, you know what I mean? Like,
it's very clear what he's doing.
Yeah, it's very clear. Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I'm like, wow, there is literally nothing they won't do.
There's nothing. Yeah. They pushed the envelope.
Jim finally, he calls back the number that he had missed the call from, and he gets through to Kat, and he tells her that he's on his way to her. And now we see that Molly, from what she just was subjected to, she has now turned. And that short man that Kat took his phone, and who originally wasn't going to let him out of the tunnel, she turns on him, and he's being held by other infected, and she goes at him with a bone saw, and she's just cutting him into bits.
Yeah, and she says, "This is my way of kissing. I'm kissing you to death."
Yeah. Yeah, the old man is still stalking Kat. She's hiding, and he just continues to say the nastiest and vilest things he could to her about all the things he's going to do to her, and it's nasty. It makes you a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does. This whole movie does.
So he finally finds her, and she blinds him with a fire extinguisher, and so he can't see. She starts bashing him in the head with the fire extinguisher, to the point where she gets on top of him, and she's just slamming it down onto his head, and keeps going until it's literally pulp.
Yeah, his face is just deteriorating into nothing. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
the effects. Yeah.
Like mashed potatoes and a frog in a blender. She escapes. The others start tracking her down. Now they hear the noise, and she escapes into hiding. And this is where she goes into a room where there's a doctor is working. And we're like, okay, he's not infected. This might be a light at the end of the tunnel. Doctor pulls a gun and cuffs her in the shower and rinses the blood off her.
So now there's more tension in the scene. It's like, we don't know if she's safe or not. She might be in more trouble.
Yeah, he goes back and forth. He's like just being cautious, but he's helpful, to being creepy and saying weird stuff. And it's like, you don't know exactly where to fall with this guy.
Yeah, they do a good job of that.
He makes her take her clothes off, says you're covered in blood. You have the virus all over you. So he makes her take them off, and she makes him turn around, which he finally does. So you're like, okay, maybe he's legit. Yeah. And he offers her some clean scrubs. So while this is going on, we see Jim arrive at the hospital, and they don't show Jim's face. They see Jim just drop his bike and just walk through the carnage, like slowly, without paying attention to anything.
He's tired. He's traveled a long way.
And you kind of get a vibe.
Yeah.
So at this point, Kat is now uncuffed, and she's changed into clothes, and you think, okay, this is where the doctor tells the speech about what he's trying to accomplish and what is happening with the infected, and how he says he's been warning people about the virus for a month. And again, it just rings of the of COVID and that era so strongly.
Yeah.
And then he cuffs her back up, and you're like, wait, what's happening now? Because he injected her with the virus, and now he's experimenting on her. He wants to see if she is immune since she's been through all this and is still not infected.
Yeah, because if she's immune, he says we can use your blood as a cure and we can get this all straightened out.
Yeah, you're going to become my human petri dish.
Yeah.
Which again, you're torn. His intentions are noble. He's going to save the world.
He's trying to save the world, and his logic was he's like, listen, you've been through all this carnage and blood, and you don't seem to be infected. I think you might be immune.
So I get it, but the way he goes about it is,
Yeah.
questionable ethically.
Well, yeah, this isn't a movie with ethics.
We hope the uninfected people, keep their humanity, but he struggles with it.
But that's part of the allegory, I think, to worldwide panic, right? Is that maybe in worldwide panic, people start slipping with their morality.
Reasonable people become very unreasonable. Sure.
Yeah.
We've probably all encountered or seen that in the last few years.
Indeed.
So at this point, the doctor gets a text on his phone telling him to evacuate on the roof in 5 minutes. Kat has shown no signs of infection from the virus he injected her, so he takes her with him. And as they go out into the hallway, an infected patient chops the doctor's foot off with an axe.
Yeah.
Just right to a stump.
Yep. Just gnarly. You can see the foot just sliced right in half, and he just falls right back, and the zombie just jumps down and starts throwing up on his wound just to infect him. Just because that's what they do.
Yeah.
He pulls out the gun and puts one right in his head.
Yeah, he shoots him. Another one comes, and he shoots the second one. And Kat helps him up. Of course, he's screaming at her, "Help me up! You can't get out of here without me."
And the gun jammed. The gun jams before he kills the second guy, because this gun in particular was made in a 3D printer, so it's not a very reliable gun.
Yeah, true. At this point, Jim comes through the door, and now we know for sure what we suspected downstairs. Jim is infected. He came all this way for Kat, and he's here. But he's no longer the Jim that we knew before. The doctor shoots at him, and he grazes his neck, kind of cuts a groove through the side of his neck, but he doesn't kill him. And Jim, he's been carrying this machete that he found for a while, kind of a hooked at the end type of machete.
Yeah.
And he buries it straight into the doctor's neck. And we know our doctor's now done. But while he's doing this, Kat has escaped through these metal doors and locks Jim out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of like these cross grated doors with metal bars.
Yep.
And there they have what starts off as somewhat of a tender moment.
Yeah.
Again, he's still in there. He's just now driven by this virus that controls his worst impulses.
It was their Titanic moment.
He talks about how he was so motivated to get to her, and my only drive was you. And you think it's going to be like a tender goodbye, and then he starts saying vile and disgusting things.
Right.
He reminds you of the creepy old man right there.
Yeah, but then he goes right back to, he's like, you don't understand, I love you, I need you. Like he actually genuinely does love her so much that he's trying to push past this limbic system, but this virus once it has a hold of you, it has a hold of you.
Yeah.
So you can tell there's still humanity left in them, but like the virus is just pushing through, and it's like these people are doomed once they get it.
Yeah, I love you, and I would have done anything to get to you, and now I'm going to cut
just
you
so I could kill you. He says a tender thing and then finish. Yeah, he'll say the tender thing and then finish it with something psychotic, and it's just like he's swirling out.
And it encapsulates the tone of this movie, really, because it's there is no tender moments and there is no reprieve. It's just brutality from start to finish.
Yeah.
Kat walks away from him, doesn't want to listen to the awful things he's spewing anymore, and she exits to the light on the roof,
where she was supposed to get in the helicopter with the virologist, and they were going to escape.
Yes.
She goes outside, and you hear gunshots, and she dies. She got shot. The helicopter shot her. She wasn't accompanied by the virologist. They didn't know who she was, so they shot her. It was a government helicopter. Yeah.
So that even further removes any sense of hope or humanity from the movie.
Yes. Yeah, she goes out there and gets shot. It sounds like it's like an M4 or something. It's like doot, 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 and you hear a scream and it's over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it looks like Jim from the wound on his neck. He's just leaning against the door, and it looks like he's probably
He's just looking maniacally. Yeah.
yeah, he's probably going to die from the wound, and is just sitting there,
Yep.
all infected, and yeah,
A great ending.
yeah, it was. Yeah, this movie is not uplifting in any way, but the action, the gore, and the effects are fantastic. And if you don't mind brutality, it's
a must see.
One to see.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone who likes these type of movies, I recommend it every time.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we said infected zombies. They kind of all portray the same characteristic. What I think sets this movie apart is that they are actual conscious humans,
Yeah,
with their personality and thoughts intact, which makes them even creepier and even more deadly than just a blind zombie.
yeah, and I really like like the tear scene, and then later on explaining that these people know what they're doing, but the limbic system's taken over, and I think it just puts the whole movie in perspective. You go back and think of all the scenes, and it's just like, oh, they've all known what they were doing, they just couldn't help it.
Yeah,
and I think that's even a bigger nightmare for all the people, because in a zombie movie, if you become a zombie, you're dead, you're unconscious, you're gone. It's just some husk that's doing the work. You're
right.
Not doing it. But in this movie, they know what they're doing and they don't want to be doing it. And
Yeah.
I think that it's just that's another allegory to people in panic.
Zombies are just out for food or flesh or brains, depending on what branch of the zombie lore
Right.
you fall in. But they're singular, in almost mindless in their focus.
Yeah.
Where this is anything but. These are complex and thoughtful creatures with awful intentions in their mind.
Yeah, yeah. It adds a layer that I haven't seen before, and I thought this movie just knocked it out of the park with its execution.
Yeah, agree. So these are two examples of apocalyptic nightmares. One from 1985, one from 2021.
Wow.
You see some similar themes that run through them. Some themes that run through, typical zombie movies, that run through movies like The Crazies. A lot of the end of the world scenarios, even movies like The Road, share some of these sentiments. But they're also distinctly different in style and execution. And I recommend both, though. I think they're both terrific at what they do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is at some point down the road, we'll have to revisit Apocalyptic Nightmares, because I think there's some other good ones we could talk about.
Oh, for sure. Probably dozens, if not hundreds.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that is our show for this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. This is the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry with my partner, Matt, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.